First and foremost, I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us for our second Arbor Advisory Council podcast. Just a quick reminder, the Arbor Advisory Council set up with our top volume and unit producers from 2022. So we wanted to make sure that rather than just go out and, have some group event and, go down to wherever and celebrate those top producers, which they deserve, we wanted to really get into their minds and understand how they are doing what they're doing, what those best practices are, and really try and put that in a format that we can distribute that to more of our originators, so that if there is, some really good best practice or there's some like secret sauce, depending on whatever, we can get that information out to everybody as a whole, and it makes us all better. That being said, we've got Jay Rodriguez here, is the star of our episode 2 Arbor Advisory Council podcast. So J-Rod is a tremendous producer. I'm just going to give a little bit of my own background, and then Jay, I'll give you some time to introduce yourself. So I think you've been with Arbor, it's for 3 years now, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
so
pretty much coming right up on 3 years.
So Jay, he came over from New American Consumer Direct, and I got to tell you, has really had a great transformation into, I think, what was a solid originator in the previous platform, and then has really flourished inside of the Arbor platform. So I know everybody's really excited. I think you're one of the leaders when it comes to answering questions about guidelines and whatnot on the chat board. So I know a lot of people are really excited to hear from you. So Jay, just give us some quick background on yourself, how long you've been in the industry, how you got started, and just anything else you find that people might find interesting about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 31 years young, got in the industry at 20 years old. Actually started with LoanStream back when they were OCNBC for a stint. And my mom's best friend was a mortgage broker for years. Basically, her and her husband and all of their colleagues were Ditech babies. So they were getting back in after loan odds were shot, and she needed an assistant. So she ended up flagging me down, and I ended up joining while I was in community college at Saddleback, and didn't quite finish after I got into the mortgage industry. But started from there, started working with her, and they were all outside originators. So they had done volume, they had databases, and I was essentially working as like transaction coordinator, or I guess now we'd call this a loan officer assistant for them and their team. Business slowed down a little bit, as we had seen in 2013, wow. And I bounced around with them to probably about like 7 different lenders. Back when we were trying to figure out, because remember when there was the crisis of people being able to actually fund lines off their warehouse lines, like really people would not fund loans. So we bounced around to different lenders to fund out pipelines because of that little credit crunch. So I got to see what was going on in terms of how many different ways that companies can actually put together a loan, because everybody has a different process flow, especially, every retail has their own process flow, and it's a little bit different as we have the broker world too. But I think that really helped be able to go in and just see different ways about what are possibilities. I was blessed to be able to actually be in a lot of these meetings when we were being courted by different other lenders. And I was like a 20, 21-year-old kid, just barely in the industry, but really got to go and peel back those layers of the onion and really started kind of learning how to both process loans, learning how they originated loans. I remember back when I started, I was scared to even talk to borrowers, and that's lo and behold, and here we are now, an originator. But it's something where they all shut down and kind of just did not proceed when we saw that we actually had rates go higher in July of 2013. So when that happened, my brother actually was dating one of the top Consumer Direct loan officer's daughters, and I would go to barbecues with him. He's like, "Hey, come to American Funding," and ended up they weren't really producing anymore, and I was paying on commission, so I wasn't making money, and I needed to go ahead and do something. So I joined New American Funding's Consumer Direct, and from there I was with them from about July of 2013 to I want to say June of 2017. So I ended up being they actually laid off the entire sales floor, or half the sales floor, right when I started, because rates had gone up, and they decided to coach everybody up that was still there. So before I even started on the phones, I knew how to process, I knew how to run DU, I knew guidelines, I just didn't know how to sell at that point, or at least I wouldn't feel confident in that. So I was given the opportunity to really just go through and gosh, I think I must have burned through at least like 500 leads.
Yeah.
This was when everybody had rates that were in the 3s and we were offering 4s and 5s. So it was kind of a bit of a hard cycle, kind of similar to what we've been going through right now of just having refinances die. So going through that market, we learned essentially how to go ahead and actually have a conversation, how to convert. And what's crazy is that those clients today, there's a lot of clients that I had helped, and like literally maybe my first 10 clients
So what's interesting there, and I think I probably speak for most of us. So I mean, I never was in the consumer direct market space, right? And so it's interesting as you talk about your journey starting in consumer direct. Obviously, what you just mentioned is you were able to create strong relationships, and that you still have today. When it comes down to what would you say when you were in the consumer direct space? Because I got to imagine that the training, I mean, that's a hard living, right? To sit there and just constantly churning through leads and not really talking to people with relationships and having to build that relationship from scratch. What were some of the things that you learned there, like those tips and tricks maybe in that early part of your career when you're in consumer direct that you still use today that like, you know, this is like one of my go-tos that I remember I used to use in consumer direct, or maybe ways that you're able to kind of, you know, hook or find deals based on what you kind of learned during that part of your early part of your career?
Absolutely. There was a couple takeaways. Databasing was huge. And my manager at the time was just an amazing database person. He'd been with the company for years and had shown me how to go ahead and be able to use the CRM. And he would literally just pull lists of, as we were helping people, we would literally help people again and again and again and again. But the main piece of that is always being able to go ahead and be able to find those little, like having little like nurture points, and additionally be able to know where could you potentially have benefit. So it was whether that was setting them up to go ahead and be able to help with the cash out, to be able to go ahead and do the refinance, to go ahead and reach back out at different touch points and ask for referrals.
So funny,
the biggest thing is people didn't ask for referrals.
I'm going to let you continue in a second, but before I miss it, I mean, I think it's just so important to point out the word that you actually used, right? That databasing, right? That's actually that's a verb, right? So, you know, it's like, most people think of their database as kind of just this like static place where information is, but the way that you reference it, I think just somebody even referring to it in that term, like your database, databasing is a verb, it's an action, it's actually something you have to do. So anyways, I just want people to make sure that you know, like when you're thinking about where to start with your database, it is something that takes action. So I think that's really, I mean, just, I'm going to have to borrow that term, dude. I think databasing is, that's going to be a new arborism that we're going to have to adopt. So
I think that's the huge aspect of it. One other piece was being an advisor and actually like sitting there and asking the questions. That's something that my mentor that got me in the business, she really poured into me about, you know, asking the right questions, actually reviewing the file and kind of figuring out, you know, why, if you're not getting an approval, why are you not having an approval? If you're reading a preliminary title report, kind of going through or just really reading into things. So having that to try to anticipate problems, to be able to go in and be problem solving that way. But also when you're really going through, not just giving somebody exactly what they were asking for, but potentially showing them solutions that they didn't even know that they, you know, had a problem that we need to solve for them. So a lot of that was going through, and actually there's a lot of people like in the call center situations, and especially we're going to run into this as we continue to have people that are calling on trigger leads. They will literally just go through and give them maybe spit out one option, two option. You see it all the time on loan estimates where the discount points can't even legally pass QM, but they send it because they want to get to the lowest payment, lowest rate, right? So it's kind of slowing people down. And I know I'm a big proponent of Mortgage Coach. You can use whatever program you want. I started using that in 2016, and it really helped me to be able to go ahead and actually show those options. And I remember that I would go and I would print from Encompass like 4 different fee itemization worksheets. And every time that the client had a question, I'm like, hold the door. I need to go ahead and do this. I remember I would be working and I would literally just print out like 9 proposals at a time, take my calls, then do proposals to the phone stop ringing. So it's kind of, and that's a little bit of what I did with making mortgage as we were doing the refinances during COVID, was kind of just going through stacking the proposals and sending everything out. But a lot of it was going through and actually being able to go ahead and take that into something that's digestible by the client, take their input. And you can do part of that with video. I still think that while they can get the information from video, you still need to be able to go and get on the call with them, or whether it's a Zoom, and kind of to have that question and be able to have them
So
ask
let me
those
just
clarifying
make, I just want to
questions,
make
so that
sure I
way you
get
can be able
this
to make
kind
sure
of
that what
sequenced
you're
out for
presenting
people that
them
are
understand.
listening. So in terms of your approach to that and putting out, like explaining those scenarios and really taking the the advisor role, right? You're talking about, okay, look, you're using Mortgage Coach as a tool where you, and you want to go the next step. Because I think a lot of us, I personally, for my production, right, I also use Mortgage Coach as well. It's a great resource. And I actually think it might have been you, even when I first met you, that helped me with Mortgage Coach. And I watched you sending videos out on Mortgage Coach. But just to be clear, so you're recording your Mortgage Coach, you send that out, you let your customer digest that, but then we're following up for a call to make sure we're calling to kind of like say, hey, did you understand the video? Do you understand the Mortgage Coach, and guiding them through that? Is that?
Yeah, and a lot of times now at this point, my loan officer assistant is now recording the majority of the mortgage proposals, but he's sat next to me in the office, and he kind of just follows my style and my lead on it. But essentially, we're sending out the video. If we can't get them on the phone,
Got
the
it.
preferred way is to send the link, get them on the phone, just walk them through the highlights, and then find out if we can, because then you just eliminate having to catch them later. But if you can go ahead and show them 4 different options, and then if you can have them automatically eliminate, saying, hey, of these 4 options, what can we just get rid of right now? Especially if they're asking me a question about showing a different one. So then I start eliminating the different forks in the road, and we start finding out.
So I want to kind of fast forward a little bit. So that was, you kind of went through Consumer Direct. We touched on some of the tools you picked up from Consumer Direct. I kind of want to move into, let's like move into the next couple of years. So you come to Arbor. You're kind of, now you're in the independent channel. What's that?
I stint between. So I went from I was a Consumer Direct, and then I went still with the New American Funding, but into the Irvine branch of their outside retail as an Ola.
Ola
So
is outside loan officer or something,
years,
that for the, as we add another acronym into the mortgage space for anybody out there. Ola also is Spanish for wave.
That was just
for those that want to question my Spanish speaking skills. But all right, so you were an outside LOA, but as what would you say, like, as we kind of fast forward in your career now, I kind of want to get into, because you had this like tremendous ramp up. I think you were somewhere funding in like that 30 to 40 million range in like 2019, call it. And then now you kind of like busted through and you funded, I think, 2021, I think you were probably in the 80 million range plus. I don't pull that data, but 2022, which was a really difficult year, you were still funding 68 million. I'm curious, in the recent part of your career, like call it the last 2 years, what would you say have been like maybe the top 1 or 2 things that you've adopted that really helped you kind of break through and into the kind of loan volume and unit count that you're experiencing today?
Yeah. So as far as when we had the explosive growth, that was all databasing. That was why we were able to go ahead and do so well. And I've always been licensed in multiple states. At one point, I had 22 when I was in the call center, and I just kept the majority of them. I still have 10 now. But that really helped, as the California market was hard to actually have buyers get offers accepted, especially during COVID. So we still did business in Texas, and we started pouring them into Florida too. But I would say that 2020 was pretty much all refis. I did very little purchase like everybody else, right? I still had a couple agents that I worked with that were great at essentially taking their clients and getting their offers accepted. And we ramped up and essentially worked more with those agents that were really good at getting offers accepted. And we still did a lot more refi too in 2021. 2022, we ended up being, like, of course, majority purchase business. And we actually did about, in 2021, we did half purchase in, I want to say that our units was half, but our volume was more in terms of, so it was kind of flip flop and work there. But the biggest thing was in the way that I was able to essentially acquire referral partners was every deal leads to a new deal. It's going through and having that buyer's agent. When you have that client that's in your database, or you get referred that client, it's not just the client that's going to go ahead and be giving you the opportunity, but it's the buyer's agent that you get the opportunity to wow. You get to go ahead and have the listing agent that you're going to have the opportunity to as well go ahead and potentially get business from. And there's a lot of listing agents that they say, hey, I do listings, And if you just make it so darn easy, they're like, oh, I would rather go ahead and have you be the person that's the LO on the deal. So I think that's something that was really an interesting paradigm shift. Was when I was in retail, we weren't necessarily best priced. We would have to go ahead and fight, and everything would be concession. We had marginally compressed, right? And we were that broker was it was like, I don't know how they were doing it. It was crazy, and it was just like so scary. Obviously, that's not the case. But what the big piece was, how do we go ahead and take this contract and close it sooner? If we get a 30-day contract, how do we close it in 2 weeks? So we kind of took that mentality of how do we go ahead and close it sooner? How do we wow him? And then do that in the broker channel where we get to essentially close quicker, go ahead and have those really insane turn times that we're able to go and do with our with our lending partners. And then be able to essentially
crap
apply
price,
that,
right? Yeah.
Have to have them
so you're able to execute on the service levels that they're used to in the IMB space, but deliver kind of what the broker price model was, right?
Exactly. And I know, especially as we saw production and we kind of saw the market shift, everyone staffed up, we got to go ahead and be able to deliver those closing times again. So now at this point, it's the same piece where everybody's staffed up and we're able to go ahead and still execute those extreme turn times. And it's just, what can you do on these systems to be able to let agents know what you're doing, keeping them? Because if you don't let them know where you are in the process, and if you just tell them at the end, by the way,
you're not building the relationship. You're not getting every single opportunity. So it's all those little contact points in between, and the little nuances of the number, the time that you can take for the additional numbers of personal communication that make the difference. And it's interesting to hear you say that, because in our first podcast that we had with Mike Wright, he also brought up the same thing. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's important for us to point out a commonality between at least the two top producers that we've been speaking to now. And I mean, look, it seems like it's common sense, but I think the reality is I don't know that everybody does it, or maybe they're not doing it the right way. And that's really taking an aggressive approach in your purchase transactions to maximize the number of referrals or maximize the relationships that you're building, right, inside of the transaction, right? Because ultimately that's when you have the captive audience. That's when your service and your skills are on display and people are actually listening. So it sounds like both you and Mike really kind of leverage that opportunity to then kind of tentacle out and build your business off of that transaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this too, you can go ahead and essentially plant these seeds and start taking that mind share with systems. So I know that we built out EOS now to go ahead and our CRM to essentially have those text messages that go out and a lot of these milestone emails. Something that was really helpful for me was, prior to us having that, my CRM was essentially sending out at every single stage, pushed by my processor, every single step from disclosures out to appraisal order, appraisal received, as long as there wasn't an issue. And then additionally, a closing disclosure, conditional loan approval, funding, doc sale, all of those steps were going out to all parties with text messages. So by having that communication, when you go ahead and essentially pick up, literally I'll call an agent,
they already got
and they'll just be already wowed and already be.
So one of the things I know that from our relationship together, obviously I know that it feels like coaching has been a big part of your growth as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided on a coach and kind of how that's impacted your production and where you find the biggest lift from involving coaching into your practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So I coach with two organizations, the Freedom Club, and I have a private coach with that. I also coach with Scott Grove's Consolidated Coaching, and I'm on their crew coaching. And I find them awesome for two really kind of similar, but also two different things. So within the space of coaching, in terms of consolidated coaching, one of the biggest aspects that's really cool is that it's almost like a litmus test to be able to go ahead and see, hey, this is how I have my business set up, and this is how our company has our business set up. But that's not the only way. And a lot of times somebody else has figured out something cooler, because collaboratively, we are so much smarter than just one entity, one person, or one team. So the ability to go ahead and consistently have community, and also not have community that's dealing with the same challenges at the same time, that also have the same input from management or what they were required to do. You're just able to go ahead and have so many people that have superpowers that you didn't even know you needed until you go ahead and send out that group text to your your crew and say, hey, I'm dealing with this challenge. can somebody like go ahead and like, has everybody had this problem? So literally everybody's so giving in this organization to be able to go ahead and get in, to be able to talk about it.
So that's
saying,
interesting. So it's like an additional, I mean,
this is
one of the
how I
things I
solved
think
it.
that
And everybody's
makes Arbor special, right, is the culture, the community around helping. In fact, you're a huge part of that, right? And in terms of, in fact, I would even argue that you're one of the champions of really responding and helping people on the loan officer chat when people have problems, deal structure questions. And it sounds like in your other so there's these other communities outside of Arbor through coaching where you're getting a lot of that same type of energy and benefit.
Absolutely. And the biggest thing is realizing that some of these people are our competitors, but they're not, right? At the end of the day, you have your referral partners, and one agent isn't your agent. They're a great person, approach, right? You have to earn the right to go ahead and essentially get their business every single time that we wake up every day, every time that we're going through and having that referable experience. Because at the end of the day, they're trusting us with their living, right? And it's something where we can't just take that for granted. But at the same point,
well,
there's
true.
no
It's
reason
funny. It's
to
so
go ahead and not share everything because nobody.
Where were we? We were up at the.
Right?
I think we were at the mastermind deal in Vegas, right? And the guy Neil Jungara, the social media guy. I mean, one of the things that he said at the very beginning of his presentation, which I thought resonated with me because I think it's so true, and it is exactly what you just said. It's like, look, I'm going to come up here and I've made X number of dollars, which anybody saying that's kind of a put off. But he goes, like, I'm going to tell you in 1 hour exactly what I did. And he goes, there's not going to be one person in this audience that's going to follow what I'm going to do what I did to do it. And, you know, even though he's there trying to sell his deal, but he's trying to get people to understand, like, look, you know, everybody can tell you what's going on and you can do all this mind share, but there's very few people that are organized enough or take the time to actually digest and then implement, you know, those changes in their practice. Right. So I think that's really important from what you're saying in terms of not being afraid. To your point, you know, no one's going to steal your idea. And really, I mean, there might be some idea that you come up with that's new, but most likely somebody's already got it. It's just, and frankly, most people aren't going to use it because they're either lazy or don't want to do it. So that's a good point.
Or together you can have an idea
exactly
and
right.
you have a much better way of executing.
So now we're here in we're here in 2023, right? And you're grinding away. What would you say? What are you doing now today? And if you're talking to loan officers at Arbor and saying, hey guys, like this is what I'm doing right now that is working. Like what are one or two of those things that you're finding right now in your market that's really working for you and that you're kind of like saying, I'm going to do more of this because it's going to generate business?
Well, I would say that the majority of like where we're getting our business from, it's agent partners that we've been continually investing in over the past year. A lot of these agents, they're coming off, especially we're starting to do more in our California market. And of course, I live now in Austin, Texas. Last year, we were pretty even between the Inland Empire, where the majority of my California business comes from, as well as like Texas and split also to a little bit of Florida. But you have a lot of agents that they didn't really have the opportunity to transact because you had so many buyers that were freaked out about the market, and you kept on getting them pre-approved, and it was a half point up every time you talked to them on their pre-approvals. I'd say the biggest market mover right now is reconnecting with everybody, even if they didn't necessarily produce. But if you have social currency with those agents, one of the biggest things that's been helpful is us going back through our entire like database of anybody that we actually have been referred in the past like year and a half.
That's so huge.
And those are opportunities to be able to go ahead and reintroduce them to what's been going on in the market. They know rates are but and also steal them from other loan officers that stopped talking to them, or if they went to somebody else because they thought that, oh, Jay's rates are now too high, I need to search. Now you can get them back. And that's the biggest thing, is reaching out to these agents because they're in the same boat. They have clients that didn't transact, and they're kind of embarrassed to call them sometimes. Agents aren't necessarily always the best at having systems and following up. But if you can go ahead and essentially call on their behalf and get them back in, pre-approved and ready for the buy downs, it's a completely different market. Until October, there was no seller paid buy downs. It wasn't a thing. And this is something I know that we're doing so much of. Unless we can't qualify, because we have to go into a program that's essential.
And that on the seller paid buy down, just product specifically. So I'm working on my own pre-approval, right? And I'm looking
Yeah.
at rates, and rates are pretty high, right? And I would love to offer that seller paid buy down, but at least in this particular transaction, I was getting feedback from the agent that there was already multiple offer property. So I'm just curious,
Mhm.
you know, how are you approaching the seller paid buy down? Or I mean, are
Yeah.
your buying agent or your selling agents that you're communicating with, they're already going in saying, look, I'm going to put my offer in with this seller paid buy down request, and then just see where the chips fall in the offer process as kind of part of the deal? Or are you kind of like educating them through walk me through how you introduce the seller paid buy down to your client, and to the agent? And is that like a unified
Yeah.
deal as they go out and make offers, is like, okay, we're only going to kind of accept an offer, or we're only going to take a transaction from a seller that's willing to pay for our buy down? Walk me through that?
Yeah. Yeah. So we're essentially using Mortgage Coach to go and say, hey, this is where rates are right now. This is what you can go ahead and get. We're also showing other programs like the $25,000 subsidy, showing, hey, this is what we can do without doing a buy down. And we can also go ahead and show with Mortgage Coach, this is where you are in a 2-1 buy down. This is your note rate. This is going to go ahead and be showing for the first year, second year, and really just go ahead and kind of having what that cost is in our little Excel spreadsheet to go ahead and demonstrate this is how much credit that is needed, but showing the difference between having it like having the relationship of you're not moving the needle on sales price. It's not sales price. You're not getting the deal there.
Right.
It's the seller concessions that you can go ahead and negotiate for that are really going to be affecting your payment or your ability to qualify. And the difference of having by essentially having a lower price isn't all
Okay.
it. I don't know. The
Got it.
markets that I'm in, we're not having issues with appraisals for the most part. Appraisals are coming in. They're coming in over. So and I think part of that is because you're
Got
still
it.
in such a limited inventory, and we still have lack of
Got it.
comps that haven't seen kind of this little trough of things that are selling a little bit lower. So that's the part of it of getting the client on board. The agent is just thrilled that the client's willing to go ahead
Yeah,
and
but
accept
to that
where
end,
rates are
right?
right
How do
now.
they
So
how
they're bought in on
so
the buyer
the
side.
buyer's
It's
in
just
on the buy
explaining
down,
that to the
right? But
client
someone's got
and
to
then
pay
being
for
able
the
to go
buy
ahead and
down,
demonstrate.
right? Ultimately. And
Well, it's going to be affected into these sellers. So one of the biggest things that we do when we go ahead and this is more tedious, but when we get they say, hey, we like this, we want to offer X. We'll say, great. So you wanted to go ahead and get
I
this
see.
like this
I
house at this
see. I
price.
see.
Let's
So
go ahead and show you it with
there it
bumping
is. And
up the
I think
price to go ahead and pay for the buy
and by
down.
the way, I just wanted to mention, so if anybody wants to ask a specific question, I know we're coming up on time here, but I will throw out a couple questions if you want to put them in chat. Something specific for Jay, we're happy to run through maybe 4 or 5 questions here towards the end. But that right there, I think, is the money winner in terms of, hey, let's go to a seller, and between the agent and the listing agent and the selling agent, they're going to say, we're going to come in and we're going to offer this, which is over list. And we want to use that credit, but we're going to do that contingent upon you giving us that credit towards the buy down. Is that, yeah, okay. That's the strategy point I was trying to key in on. That makes sense.
100%. And explaining to the buyer that it's coming out of nowhere, right? But then also at the same point, realizing that they're going to either get
Yeah,
the
I like
payment
that.
benefit or that they're going to be
All right,
having it
so
reduced
last
on their
question
payoff.
for
So
you
they're either
before we
having
get to
payment savings or
Q&A
they get
with
it
the
later when they
crew.
refund.
And just so
Either
you
way, they
know,
win.
like I love, like we try and keep these to 30 minutes, and I know you and I could probably session. In fact, we have for for way over 30 minutes, buddy. So it's always fun picking your brain. But like when we keep these our podcast down to 30 minutes, one, I think it's great. One, because we got to get back to our day, but two, I think it keeps people thirsty for more information. I just want everybody to know out there that, look, we're going to have more people on this. We'll be able to get back into Jay's head, Mike's head, but we just want to make sure we get you the most important stuff in the shortest amount of time for you that you can start actioning on in your day and kind of help hopefully implement to build your business. So, I mean, takeaway for me is databasing as a verb is huge, right? The seller buy down is huge. And then obviously capitalizing in that transaction. Then last, Jay, like obviously you've been at Arbor for 3 years. You're kind of one of the core folks in our culture. What would you say has been what's your favorite part of being at Arbor?
I think the biggest part that I really enjoy is that there's no just flat out no's. There's almost endless possibilities every single time that I either have an issue or that there's this like, and it's not necessarily with the company. It's more about, I'm seeing this in my business. How do I overcome this? Every time that I've ever brought that to you, John, and to Dave, it is always like, Jay, we've been experiencing this ourselves. This is what we're doing. And this is what we're trying to do to mediate it. You know, what's your take? And it's something where you're not there just for the sake of saying, sorry, you can't do it, or you need to lean in on comp, or you don't have these walls that are just constraining you to a box. You give me the opportunity to essentially take my business and, you know, run it to the best of my ability using all the tools that are available.
I appreciate that, buddy. So you're obviously, we're
essentially limiting
stoked to have you on board. You're one of our, you know, well, you're on the AACP, dude, and you're definitely somebody that is in the core fabric of our culture. So, and I appreciate, just thank you for taking time out of your day. I know how busy you are to be able to share with the rest of the team. I'm going to just check in the chat and see if we got anybody pumping in a couple questions for us here. So let me go in here. Yeah.
Jack had one about out-of-state realtors. So the only thing that I have done, and I'll be fully direct about this, I still have my 949 number that everybody has known for over 10 years. I have a 512 Austin number. And Texans like working with Texans. And I live in Texas, but my Verizon number is still 949. I still answer my 512 Ring Central number. But that's the only thing in that regard for local business here. I would say don't be afraid to reach out to these agents. The minute that you get an out-of-state contract, the more that you're kind of just like the boogeyman, the more that they're going to try to get you over to some out-of-state lender. And what I have found is that there are so many lenders that are out there that is just not.
That's a great point.
They kind of are just there because they're in the local area. You don't need to necessarily be local to exceed. You have tools, you have experience, you have expertise, and you have people that you can be able to go ahead and lean on to be able to find out more information about specific local knowledge or what you need to do. But getting loans done, you can go ahead and pick up with confidence and go ahead and reach out to that buyer's agent, reach out to that listing agent, and really just show them your professionalism. So as long as you go ahead and actually connect with them and you don't hide behind something, I think that's huge. Something else is really respect and know their time zones. If you're calling them, you need to go ahead and know and start talking to them in their time zone as opposed to saying your name. Always say that for all of your clients and every person that you're speaking to in a different time zone. So that way it just kind of keeps them happy. They know what's going on. And then it just is then kind of say,
I will
say what you're going to do and do what you're going to say.
The point there that I think is so important, again, we'll leave it here with that kind of that final takeaway. And what I gather in terms of just talking with you over the last 30 plus minutes, right, is that, you are actively taking action on a daily basis, right? I mean, the way you talk about databasing, talking about the number of texts, talking about the number of phone calls. And I really like the comment you made, like, don't hide behind, right? Like, I do feel right now, and that's one thing that as a company and as we're working with our marketing department, trying to come up with new ways to help loan officers connect with past clients, with realtors and things like that. I think that there's been this propensity to hide behind different types of marketing. We hide behind a flyer, we hide behind a text, we really hide behind technology, in my opinion. And it's really, it's almost addictive, right? Because you can feel like you did something, but you're not doing anything to really build that relationship. And so I really appreciate the fact that you're actually calling realtors. Yeah. Like, you have to call them. They have to hear your voice. They have to understand they have to feel your expertise through your voice intimations and through your ability to articulate the complicated things that you're able to solve and do. So if I were to kind of leave this and tell folks, like tell our loan officers, anybody listening, it's like, look, databasing, right? Get into your database. And then when you are going to get into your database, pick up the phone and call them and use your relationship skills to reconnect with those people the right way. Don't send a text. Don't send an email. Pick up the phone, even if you got to leave a voicemail. Ask them about, like, how's their life? Get that human connection going again, because I think that's what's missing, Jay. And I think your business and your volume is proof to the point that, look, if you're not hiding behind and you're building personal connections, your volume is going to increase. So with that, buddy. Yeah, Ben.
I'd leave you one more thing there. When you're leaving that voicemail, I will leave a voicemail that it says, "Hey, looks like I missed you. I'm going to send you a video." And literally just so that way they get a voicemail notification, send a video, however small it is, because that way they're going to go ahead and see
ones
you.
and
You're no
zeros, right?
longer
When you
gonna
send
go
an
ahead and
email,
just
you leave a
be
voicemail, your
this
ones and
random
zeros, right?
person
Because they
that
can't
they
see
can
you.
just kind of say, "Oh,
They can't
whatever."
see your face.
Just like kind of check off.
That's an awesome. Yeah.
When you record that video and you send that, they're going to stop whenever they're going to stop, and they're going to click play. We are designed with whether it's TikTok, Instagram, we're designed to go ahead and pay attention, and they're not trying to get you off the phone. They're going to listen to what you have to say. They're going to internalize it. So then you have the opportunity to now be a person, take mind share, and they'll actually pick up the phone.
Sometimes it's hard for us. But
so that's the big
somebody. Well, dude, hey, thank you so much for taking the time, bud, and thank you everybody that was, on the podcast. We're looking forward to scheduling up the next one. And good luck. Hopefully, you got some value out of today's podcast and start databasing. All right, see y'all.